I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And State of Grace Masquerade. This is for...
To Death 3.
To Death 3?
He's the one that sent us the letter.
Yeah, this was a long time coming.
Poor guy.
If you saw the
Christmas in April.
In the Christmas in April
2020.
video, 2020, you'll see that the big homie he sent his 75 through the mail.
Yeah, that was a different way of doing it. So we didn't actually open it first.
Oh, what did he say? He said he didn't want the bastards at Patreon to get any of our money. That's what he said. So thank you very much, my guy. I appreciate it. If you, dear listener, would like to cut in front of the line and get your song reviewed, $125. If you do it 3 times, you get pushed down to the $75 rate. If you did $75 rate 3 times in the past, then you get grandfathered in at that rate. If you haven't, it's $125. This is Masquerade-State of Grace. Is this the only one the big homie did? So for you, if you... Who was this again? What's the name of the guy?
To Death 3.
To Death 3. I know that you've only done this once, but we're gonna put you at the $75 rate to perpetuity because we took too long to get your song done. Okay, so you're grandfathered in at the $75 rate.
Everybody's grandfathered in.
No, not every. There's nasty capitalist story. Let's go. States of Grace. Let's do it. Down tune.
It's on the news now every day.
That's different.
The common market's on display. The ancient laws of yours and mine, they're getting harder to define. Unite the nations on the road. There is a need. It's in the nature of our greed. A rich man
1994?
Yep.
Why have we never heard of this band before? Good song. Written in 94, so that's what? 25 years? 26 years?
That's so weird.
It's 2020. Vincent doesn't know how to do math.
That's 16 years.
That can't be
94?
16 years. 94 to 2020? That can't be 16 years. You're killing me,
getting it.
Smalls. I think it's... I'm pretty sure we're a great homeschool commercial right here.
Oh no! Oh no!
26. I was right.
94 was 26 years ago.
Yeah. I was right. It's 26 years ago. There's this crazy lady that wrote this thing. This Harvard professor wrote about how dangerous homeschooling is because it's like she basically was like, this puts the children under the complete control of the parent, and the parent gets to brainwash the child. I was like, thank you very much for showing your hand that your intention with public school is to brainwash my child, and you're upset that I get to brainwash my child
instead of you.
Instead of you, you filthy person, you. Okay. This is really good. Very political song.
I said, boy, Vince, you don't like this one.
Well, you know, I love it when people... One of the reasons... I mean, there's a couple reasons I started the Middle America channel, but you can check it out. Middle America with Vin and Sori. Because, you know... I get kind of confused when people don't want to talk about politics because it directly affects your life in every facet of it. Yeah. So people like, oh, I need a break from politics. It's like, you cannot have a break from politics because politics is what happens when the populace comes together and determines this is how we're going to live. So the whole fear of, let's see, I think the worst part of it is intellectual laziness, and the other side of it is just exhaustion because...
that's what I think. It's just people are tired of it.
Because of the duopoly we have.
There's so much that's always going on, and then, you know, there's a lot of the dishonesty, and you gotta wade through that, and then there's the, you know, I don't know, there's so many opinions. Like, sometimes it just makes me feel just tired. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I totally understand that. But, you know, and I don't know, maybe because being black in America, you better pay attention to politics and you better get yourself informed, otherwise things aren't going to go well for you. So I think some people have more at stake in the political zeitgeist than others do, I guess. But, you know, I've never ever since I was, you know, a small child, like I'd be sitting with my mom she'd be watching CNN, or sometimes at night I'd watch C-SPAN because it was the only thing on TV. And so I was always interested in it. And, you know, my mom would always talk to the TV, you know, and say, well, what about this, Mr. Clinton? So I just don't understand. And the other thing is, it's completely fascinating to me. It's like,
yeah,
you know, I grew up with Bill Clinton, you know, and you know, I was here toward the end. I was like 2 or 3 toward the end of the first Bush administration. And I remember... Clinton was starting to roll up, and then they had this thing, Commander-in-Chief, and they had the American flag, and it was Bush, and it was talking about how he guided us safely through the Iraq War, the, you know, Desert Storm, and how much of a hero he was. And granted, the first Bush was he was definitely he was a stud, that guy. He was absolutely a stud. You know, helicopter, plane crash, whatever, behind enemy lines, made it home. Like, that's George Bush Sr. Like, the dude is a certified gangster, but he's also a certified, you know, along with everybody else in Washington, a certified war criminal too, as well as his son's, the guy who took over for his son, Mr. Barack Hussein Obama, is also a war criminal, and Trump is on his way. He's not going to get outdone. He's already dropped 73,000 drones on people. So, but this song is a really political song, and I'm very happy about it. Unfortunately, it's more relevant now than it ever was before, especially when it talks about what did he say right here? Democracy, hypocrisy, political rage.
Yeah.
The poor man's fall for every renegade, a rich man's war to dominate and trade. Confederate and confiscate, new order revolution, evolution state, discriminate and separate, a better constitution, revelation state, a state of grace. So, A state of grace is a technical term in Catholicism, which basically means you're in good standing with God. Right? So that's a venial sin injures your status with God, injures redeeming grace, and then mortal sin kills your status with God, hence it's called mortal sin. So the technical term for a state of grace is that.
Okay.
But
why did they put that in here?
Because the term state is also another word for country. Right? And so like to fall from grace means to fall from your, your high, your high status.
Yeah.
So I think it's a double in the sense of we're not in a state of grace as a nation because
there's all this going on.
We can't live up to our ideals, and America itself is not a state or a country of grace because it tramples on the poor because of crony capitalism. You know, a lot of people misunderstand my issues with capitalism. And there's also, I think, a misunderstanding.
I always feel like it's just because you love people so much.
Well, right. And
not just numbers, they're human beings, and
right.
Capitalism can trample on that idea.
Yeah, unfettered capitalism can, now in this whole COVID, it's already begun to happen, right? Where these massive companies are getting billion and trillion dollar bailouts, and then the small business groups only had 400 billion.
People. Yeah.
So then what happened is now these guys that are getting the massive bailouts are starting to buy up these companies that are going out of business because of this COVID stuff.
Aww.
So it's this massive wealth transfer that is already beginning to happen. It was it happened with an independent pharmacy or something where these giant corporations are now going because they got bailed out with our money.
That's not right.
They got bailed out with our money.
That's not
and
right.
then what the government did was they said, okay, we'll give you an advance on your tax return in 2021. Here's $1,200. And everybody's like, oh, great. Well, not everybody, but people, they did us a favor. Meanwhile, these corporations are getting these billion, trillion dollar bailouts, right? And then the small businesses had like $284 billion. That dried up in like 2.5 weeks. And then they died. And now these guys are coming in who got all the extra aid, and they're able to suck up these companies. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. But people are so... There's a couple things that's happening. People are...
Okay.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
It makes me so sad when I hear about the small businesses because, I think about our channel. Now, our channel... we're online, so Correct. It doesn't suffer during a time like
Correct.
this. We can carry on as usual.
Correct.
But
Correct.
if we have put so much time into our channel. I understand that from the viewers' end, it just looks like, they just sit down and have a conversation and throw out a video. But there's been a lot of discussions. There's been a lot of exhaustion. There's been a lot of frustration. There's been fights between us. There's all this stuff that you go through when you're really trying to make your small business work. And the channel has been obviously a journey in music, but at the same time, it's a way that we're trying to, financially support our family and be able to go full time. And so to have put in so much into the channel and then to lose it all because of the COVID-19 stuff would be absolutely just so discouraging to me.
Well, and then
that's what's happening to people.
To have it stolen from you.
Right.
By a massive corporation who should be able to bear the brunt of an economic collapse.
And you pay your taxes, So
it's absolutely
that's
criminal.
Just sad.
But here's what's happening is we have presidential election looming. We've got all these controversial figures like Biden, Bernie, AOC, and then you got Trump on the other side. You've got a Democratic establishment that was never focused on the issues for the last 4 years. And this is one of the things that I was pounding so much on the Middle America channel during the whole Russiagate. Does anybody care about Russiagate right now?
Nope.
Does anybody care about Ukraine right now?
Nope.
It's completely disappeared. And the reason it's disappeared is because the DNC never believed that they were going to be able to get rid of Trump. It was all distraction devices because they didn't want Bernie Sanders to be able to win the nomination. And the entire charade that was going on for the last 3.5-4 years was about Bernie. It was not about Trump. It was about making Trump the absolute worst person on the planet so that you then could say, hey, anybody's better than him, which is exactly what you guys did with Clinton, and it worked like a charm. And people could say, oh, Vin, that's a conspiracy theory. Well, I mean, how come they're not talking about it now? It was the only thing anybody would ever talk about. Now we're not talking about it. And even before COVID-19, that disappeared because everything was about the Democratic primaries, and they turned their guns on who? Bernie. That's who they turned their guns on.
Yep.
Right when the Democratic primary started, all the Russia nonsense and the Ukraine nonsense went right out the window, and then they turned their guns on Bernie. And Bernie was a Nazi, and you know, Chris Matthews basically implied Bernie the Jew who's had families gassed in the Holocaust. Chris Matthews was comparing him to a Nazi. Chris Matthews was comparing him to the brown shirts and talking about how he's going to get executed in Central Park if Bernie wins and yada yada yada. They turned all their, and they even said that he was a Russian asset, and they said Tulsi was a Russian asset. And so what ended up happening is that we're so easily distracted by this stuff, and they do this, and I remember like good friends of mine were like, oh, going crazy on Russia, going crazy on Ukraine, wanted to have him impeached, all this craziness. I'm like, guys, what about the issues? What about Medicare for all? What about crony capitalism? What about getting money out of politics? No, Trump. Okay. And so this is how they've successfully been able to do that. Now in this COVID situation, we're all desperate. Everybody's literally scared to death. We're looking at these horrible numbers. So then these people get to basically, it's being called, and you know, watch Jimmy Dore because he's covered it very well. This is being called, this latest bailout is being called the largest theft and wealth transfer in the history of human beings. Because of what's about to happen, and it's horrible. It's horrible stuff. And I'll tell you what, you know, the 2008 bailouts precipitated the Occupy Wall Street, which was more or less, you know, a pretty docile movement. But I'll tell you what, this happens again to people. 5 million people lose their houses, and thousands of people lose their small business that they've invested their entire life in, so that you could make 1,000 people in America go from billionaires to trillionaires or millionaires to billionaires. You watch. You watch. You can only push people so far.
Can you imagine that happening in 2008 and then happen to you again?
And the thing is, the difference in 2008, you could make an argument, okay, people were silly. If you make $30,000, if you make $30,000 a year, you had no business opening up a $500,000 mortgage. Okay, fair. Okay, fine. You got a 428 credit score. What made you think that you were going to be able to deal with a 375K mortgage? So on the one hand, you can kind of say personal responsibility, but in this situation, we were told by the government, shut down your business, stay inside. That's what we were told. And then, because of the obvious economic ramifications of what happened, now you set people up to get completely fleeced by the top 1,000 earners in America. Like, see, like, I'm one of those people where I say, like, look, the guy's a billionaire, he dedicates his entire life to making money, like, that's him. Like, I don't demonize billionaires or rich people, even though I don't have a very good affinity for capitalism. But if a person decides that they're not going to be with their family and they're going to do the Bezos thing and work 18-hour days and all the rest of it for 5 years straight like he did with Amazon, that's his, okay, fine. But that's not what happened in 2008, and it's definitely not what happened this time. This is, you are fleecing people, and it's happening right under our nose. And you know, and so we supposedly have a democracy. How do we have a democracy when you've got, think about the last election. You had Clinton and you had Trump. Now, aside from a small cadre of Trump, like, devotees, people were basically saying, I don't really like Trump, I don't know what he's going to do, but I can't stand Hillary and I know what she's going to do. Right? That's not a democracy, where you don't have somebody that you believe in that you can vote for. And then on top of that, the Jimmy Dores of the world, I think Susan Sarandon, they were persecuted because they voted green. It's like, I thought this was a democracy. Now you got Bernie, who, as I said in my theory, was really the target for the last 3.5 years, who, it's mind-boggling to me that Bernie, that in my room, you know, with a little black backdrop, that I could see what the Dems were doing.
I know.
With the Trump situation, and that Bernie went along with it, and then is almost surprised when they turned the guns on him, and then he went and bent the knee to these people, and now he's telling us that if we vote our conscience and don't vote for Biden, that we're being irresponsible.
It's crazy.
It's madness.
The whole thing's crazy.
And again, I think that's another thing that's really, really dangerous, because Bernie, look, when you've got, people in trouble and people in economic hardship, that's why I think this whole COVID thing,
see, what you can see the way, when all of a sudden everybody's flipping and they're all giving their nomination to Biden,
right, when
you clearly knew that they weren't like that.
Correct.
So they are going against their own conscience, and they want the people to do the same thing.
Correct. Well, Amy Klobuchar, Mayor Pete, all those people, they were all establishment corporate Democrats. Mm-hmm. So they're doing what they're told to do because all they care about is power. They don't really have any loyalty to any sort of principle or movement. That was clear in 24 hours before Super Tuesday. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that keeps, violent ramifications at bay is, and I was going to say about the COVID situation where people are like, we need to stay shelter in place and we cannot open up businesses and things like that. And people are looking at it in this sort of black and white, myopic, like, oh, Trump only wants the thing open because all they care about is money. Mm-hmm. No. When people are impoverished, violence escalates. A lot of people are, this is a blind spot with a lot of people. A lot of people are looking at the domestic violence and the suicide rates. All those things are skyrocketing, and they're only attributing it to shelter in place. Hello? If you marry somebody, you've committed to spend your whole life with them. You think that the only reason domestic violence, etc., is skyrocketing is because people are now they have to look at each other all day? No. You know what's happening? Is...
all those other
I see bill after bill after bill after bill coming, and I don't have a freaking job, and I don't know when I'm going to get another job, and so now I'm high stress. So now I'm going to take it out on her, she's going to take it out on the kid's going to jump off a bridge. Like, that is what is happening. So when people are like, have this simplistic, oh, states, it's for the health of people, da-da-da-da. Hello? People are dying right now because of shelter in place. Mm-hmm. And people are being abused right now because of shelter in place. And you watch what's going to happen to suicide rates and abuse and all that stuff when we finally do open up and these people lose their houses. Like, this is this oversimplistic understanding of what is happening. Like, that's why I give everybody a pass. Pelosi was out there telling people to go to Chinatown, hug a Chinese person, no disrespect, Viva China. All these, de Blasio was saying this nonsense. De Blasio was out stretching in the park when everybody was supposed to shelter in place. Trump said at the beginning it wasn't that big of a deal. A couple people died in China. Nobody's going to die in America. I remember that whole speech he gives the last public. Yeah. I give everybody a pass.
He said by Easter we were all going to be back.
Right. I give everybody a pass for that stupidity because none of us have been through this situation before. That's not my problem. My problem is how they reacted to it economically, which is going to create some real bad energy with people. It's really going to do that. It's like in 2008, these guys got these bailouts, and then right after that, they gave him the guy gave himself like a $60 million bonus with the money that he took from us while he was taking everybody's house. You keep doing stuff like that to people, and you watch, and that's the thing. It's like, that's the thing about Bernie that people are missing too. It's like, this guy was a stopgap to a violent alternative. And so the problem, here's what's happening with the progressive movement, is that Bernie is a Martin character, but there is no Malcolm character. And what I mean by that is, Martin was coming around as a very peaceful guy, saying, hey, we're going to do the nonviolence thing, we're going to do the Jesus thing, we're going to, hey, we're going to turn the other cheek, the dog's coming, all the rest of it, we're, and so people are, oh, that's very nice, Mr. Negro, good for you. And then, people would say, oh, he's very inspirational, and they went, and then you had Malcolm, and then you had the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talking about, posing with the shotgun, talking about any means necessary, talking about how Malcolm was like, nah, if you come over here with that mess, you're going to get a response from us physically. So what ended up happening was you had people going, well, this Negro is very nice and nonviolent, this guy has a bunch of power, so if we don't listen to the nice Negro, we don't want to deal with the and they called the FBI, it's open source, do a FOIA next year, they called Malcolm a messianic figure. Oh. They were scared of Malcolm.
Yeah.
And so that made it so that that Martin was listened to, and that's why today, to this very day, we have Martin Luther King Day. We don't have Malcolm Day. Malcolm's walking around calling the white man the devil and all the rest of it. You're not gonna prop that guy up. So what's happening with Bernie is a Martin figure. He says all this stuff. He's very inspiring, yada yada, but he's soft. He won't do anything.
Yeah.
So there is no Malcolm figure on the progressive left, and that is the problem. Because they're going to jerk around the perceived weak guy, and he's just going to go along with the party line and all the rest of it. And, you know, Martin had more gangster in him than people realize, especially toward the end, which is very interesting, but that's another subject. So you know, Farrakhan did a tour after, I think it was a Philando Castile. It's called Justice or Else. And, you know, in that, he's like, do you want me as a voice of God to tell our troops to, you know, and so the point is that you've got to have that type of a figure. It's the same thing in the abolitionist movement. You had Frederick Douglass, who was writing in all this, and then you had John Brown, a white guy, who would go into a plantation and set that shit on fire.
Yep.
So you wanted these slaves because of the economic boom that it gives you. How about I just burn down your entire plantation? And you had to have those things, right?
Right, and because that's what makes people start thinking. You know, when they then have skin in the game. You know, they had no problem tearing, you know, black families apart, or beating, you know, black people to death, or raping the black women. But then when that stuff started flipping and they started paying some consequences for it, people were like, well, let's you know.
Yeah. 100%.
You can't treat human beings like animals and expect that it's going to be okay.
Well, right. But again, when you have a figure that's talking, very conciliatory, let's work together, yada, 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 the people in power will patronize that guy, but will never take him seriously. And they'll jerk him around, they'll do whatever. But then when you have another guy on the other side who's more radicalized, it incentivizes the people in power to do that. And there's nobody like that on the progressive side. And Bernie has now basically...
It's a good cop, bad cop thing.
Of course it is. And Bernie has now become basically... I'll tell you what, and it's Barack Obama, whoever's running everything behind the scenes is probably the greatest political genius ever in human history. Because they've turned their greatest weakness, which was Bernie Sanders, into their greatest strength. Because now Bernie is the mouthpiece. He's supposedly the progressive, but he's now the mouthpiece of, basically... It would be like if the KKK was able to recruit Martin Luther King. Like, that's really it. That's how bad these people are.
Wow.
And let me tell you something. These policies, whether it's the DNC or the GOP, these policies have killed way more people than the KKK. So it's not a crazy analogy. Bernie has now become the mouthpiece for the establishment Democrats and telling us that we're irresponsible if we don't vote for Joe Biden. A guy who is to the right of Trump when it comes to health care.
I know, it's crazy. Absolutely insane. I'm very surprised because Bernie, you know, Medicare for all seemed like a big thing to him. So, but you know, beating Trump is, I guess, bigger.
Well, he went along. He's the one that says that Trump is the most dangerous president in U.S. history, which is absolute madness.
Right.
Trump is more dangerous.
That's what happened.
Than Bush, who got us into a legal war, killed between 250 to 1 million Iraqi civilians, men, women, and children, people in weddings. Okay, all right. Whatever you say, he's more dangerous than, shoot, you don't even need president. Was he more dangerous than Hillary Clinton, who basically architected the Arab Spring and completely destabilized the region in Libya and brought back the slave trade in Libya, where you had a bunch of Africans on the docks literally being sold after your little excursion into Libya there? Mrs. I came, I saw, we killed him, whatever. She's laughing and cackling about murdering Gaddafi and all that. Man, get out of here. So... Yeah, Bernie has completely capitulated to these people, and he fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. And you know, I tip my hat to Barack Hussein Obama, because in my mind, he's the guy behind all of this. He's the one that strategized all of this. After the Clinton loss, I think he sat back there and said, "I'm not going to let this happen again." And so he's been planning from the get-go. I think he's calling the shots on all this stuff.
Wow.
And it worked. We were distracted for 4 years. So we didn't get to see all the bullshit policies that the Democrats have supported. The Democrats were talking about how horrible Trump was, and then they gave him over, like $500 billion for the war budget. If he's the most dangerous president we've ever seen, why would you give him $500 billion or $1 trillion for the war budget? Because we're all distracted. Russia!
Yep.
Russia, who's got a GDP below California. Did you know that? Anyway, this is a very, very good song. I could go on and on and on and on and on. All I gotta say is we're in pretty terrible times, and things are gonna get more difficult as we start to feel the effects of this stuff. But you know, don't let it get you down. And I mean that in the most literal sense, because if you start losing hope, then that's when people start getting violent. You know, it's like Martin said, a riot is the voice of the unheard, or whatever. So there you go, good song, and I like the song. I like the chorus. Definitely a 90s song, but I definitely liked it. And I like the bass action too, because they featured the bass in the song, and I like when bands do that, because I don't have an ear for bass, and so when I can hear it, that means they're featuring it. 9.8.
Oh my god.
Because of its prophetic nature. It's written 26 years ago and is more relevant now than before.
I was not really a fan of the vocal style. That kind of threw me off there at the beginning. I didn't really, you know, and I'm not a big political person, so it's a 6 for me.
Then out.
Sorry, out.
Gone. I ain't gonna argue with this girl.